For those of you that are just joining us, welcome to creating real-time alerts on critical events. My name is Gwen Lamar. I'm part of the marketing team here in the Boston office. And with me today, we have our special guest, Greg Lucas. You want to say hi, Greg?
How are you doing, everyone? Good morning.
Great. Just a few housekeeping items before we kick things off. We'll be taking questions at the end of the webinar. Feel free to post any you have in the chat room and we'll address them at the end. Additionally, we'll be sending out the recording towards the end of this week. So don't fret if you have to leave early or if you miss something. Okay, again, Greg, thank you so much for joining the webinar and planning everything. Before we get started, could you tell us a little bit about your role at Logz.io?
Sure. So my name's Greg Lucas. I'm a solution architect here at Logz.io. So primarily my job is to assist our customers in making sure they get the most value out of the solution and understanding its capabilities to the fullest extent. So I assist both the sales team and customer success.
Okay, great. And without further ado, we'll begin the webinar.
Awesome. All right, so I just shared my screen out here. This is a deck quickly we're going to go through and talk about real-time alerting, some of the benefits you receive, and then we'll go into a demonstration after. So again, my name is Greg Lucas. I'm a solution architect here. Here's my contact information for any of those that might have questions. After the webinar, you can email me directly here at greg.l@logz.io. So here's an agenda, a couple of things we're going to run down. So why alerts, some of the common drivers, why you might create an alert on log data and what might have been lacking previously. We're going to talk about the act of actually creating alerts within a system, and then how to manage those alerts, and then a few examples of alerts, and I'll cover those specifically in the context of Logz.io and how you might manage those. So why alerts in general? So there's three screenshots that you're seeing here are the one on the far left is an edit alert screen. This shows how you might configure an alert all the way to the top down. So we're talking about the query, we're talking about the definitions, which might be the name, where this alert goes to and how it's triggered. The middle screenshot actually shows an alert that's been triggered and received by one of our endpoints that's been configured. And you can see that we actually pass all of the metadata to that screenshots, from the title of the alert to what the severity level is, to some samples of what triggered that alert rate. And so you can see in the screenshot below here, we're showing the request that this excessive 500 errors alert came from, the client IP, so which host this actually came from, and then actually a playbook, right? So, whoever receives this alert, how do they act on this? And the far right screenshot is showing how you would configure one of your endpoints. So some of the out-of-the-box endpoints available in Logz.io are PagerDuty and Slack, and those just require simple service keys to be implemented. So for PagerDuty, it's a service key, and for Slack, it's just a webhook URL that's easily configured. Cool, awesome. So now quickly before I go on to actually creating an alert, so why would you create an alert? So you might identify an issue in one of your environments. This could be, again, the excessive number of 500s as you're seeing on the screen. This could be a specific exception that you're looking for in one of your environments. Now, previously, if you just have your own log files or you have your own Elk deployment, you would have to manually search for that data and find out when it happened. If you're using some other technology, you might have to, write a custom script to query the data and pull it every so often, and then set an endpoint for where that goes to. So there are a variety of reasons you might create an alert. So the ways to think of it are whether an event happens at all, or whether an event exceeds a certain threshold within a specified time period. Those are your kind of primary reasons, and I'll talk about that when I get into the demonstration portion today. So for creating alerts in Logz.io, the first step is actually just defining your query in Kibana. So all a query consists of is the filter, and then anything in the free text search. If you combine those two together, they act as an AND operator. So you can combine both filters and the free text search. The free text search is based on a Lucene query syntax. It also supports a limited form of regular expressions. So you can get pretty custom in terms of what you're querying data and what you're alerting on specifically. And then you also have your alert definitions, right? So primarily an alert's made of a name, which is required. An action endpoint is not entirely required, but makes most sense because you want to be able to get notified about it. You have the ability to view when alerts get triggered within Logz.io. It makes sense to have a recipient. Your trigger, right? So do you want to get alerted whether an event happens at all or whether an alert fires? Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Whether an alert fires at all, and then the output. Actually, this is something we included out of the box. So an alert definition has an output which has a custom format. So if by default, you'll notice when there's the default format selection, it actually sends a JSON payload of the alert. Custom format allows you to define specific fields that get sent. So if I quickly jump back to the last screenshot we had, this is an example, right? We sent the request field and the client IP field. After you're done, all you have to do is create alert, and this becomes an alert that runs within the context of your Logz.io account. By default, every alert is enabled, but you actually also have the ability to disable those alerts for ones that you're testing or ones that maybe aren't relevant for that specific state and time, but you want to keep them around for maybe a future state. Last thing I'll go into is managing alerts and what that looks like in terms of Logz.io. So there's high level detail about each alert. So when you come to the list of your alert definitions within Logz.io, you can obviously see the name of the alert, description, how often that alert fires, what it tests against, right? So you can see some of the examples here in this screenshot. We'll go into this a little bit more in the platform. For each alert, again, you can actually contribute them back to the community so that they can be picked up by other users within the Logz.io and Elk community. Obviously, the ability to go and edit those alerts, delete them from your account, and then also enable and disable them via toggle on the far right. This alert list within your context of your account is filterable both by the name, by the severity, and then also the tags. So I'll go into that during the demonstration part of the scenario. Cool. And with that, I'll jump right into the demo. Okay. So now I'm actually in the Logz.io platform here. For those of you that are familiar with Logz.io or Elk in general, this is a familiar interface. So this is Kibana. So when you first log in, this is the first thing that you always see. There's a list of all of your log data, all the fields that are available on the left. We can see across the top here, the set of logs across the last 15 minutes broken down into various buckets. So this is broken down into 30-second timer intervals. So one of the things I'm going to do, two things. I'm going to actually create two different alerts. One is going to be an alert based off of a threshold, and one will be an alert based off of a specific string pattern that we might be looking for. So the first one is actually going to be related to the example that we went through when we were talking about excessive number of 500s. Now, the way we could execute this alert, right, is one, by typing response 500 to 599. We can also leverage the filters functionality. So this is something that's available in Kibana. So if I simply just click add a filter, and then we just want to look for all of our response codes, and we want to look for everything that's between 500 and 599. And when we hit save, that'll add a filter right below the search bar. So in the last 15 minutes, we've had two 500 errors. And this one happened at 11:04, and then the other one happened at 11:14. Now, if I were to expand this to the last 24 hours, my filter stays within the context of the platform. And right, we can see we've had 730 500 errors over the last 24 hours. and you can see the various number of those 500s broken down into 30-minute intervals. And one of the things I think you'll notice right away is that that spike of 500 errors occurring around 6:30, which 6:30 a.m. This is Eastern time zone because of my browser. And I can actually, so now I can maybe I could create an alert based on this. So this happened 53 times within that time frame. Maybe I want to get alerted if that happens 53 times again in the future, maybe in a lower time frame, maybe in 5 or 10 minutes, just for the purposes of this example. So as I mentioned earlier, the process of creating alert is A, defining a query, and B, just deciding what your threshold is going to be. So this example, we're going to start with 50 as the threshold. So after I've defined my query, again, this could be your filter. This could also be free text search. So if I had added error in here, for example, we could also add error to this alert. But once I'm done defining the query for the alert, I hit the create alert button on the far right. And what that will do is it'll automatically pull the filter into the alert creation screen. Same thing goes for the free text. So if I had added errors before, instead of the asterisk symbol here, you would see the term error or any other free text. So I'm going to cover each section, so what's available in the alert creation screen. Obviously, the first thing is the name, right? So what is the title of this alert? So it's searchable. You have some context of what this is right away upon first glance. So we might call this something like excessive 500s. Description, right? So what does someone do with this alert when they receive this excessive 500s? And this is going to be contextual to your environment, to your organization, your team, wherever this alert gets sent to. If this is coming to yourself, say, this might be something that you want to do yourself do on a daily basis to resolve this issue. So this could be like, okay, one, check internal systems, something very basic. Two can be go look at a specific dashboard in Logz.io, which you could add a link. So then when this gets consumed by Logz.io and comes back to one of your endpoints, you might have an example like this, right? So review the output, log into Logz.io, view this dashboard, and this will actually launch you directly into the application. And then you have a playbook to check each specific alert. Again, it also includes a screenshot. You can also open the full view of that alert and the screenshot within the context of a browser, and then also view what the conditions which trigger that alert. So this view in Kibana link will actually take you to that specified time frame within Kibana automatically based on all the alert conditions, which includes the actual query itself, which is filters and free text, and also the time frame in the top right, as we had witnessed earlier in the Discover view in Kibana. Tags is something that was introduced relatively recently. Both the description and the tags field are optional in terms of filling out the alert form. What tags gives you the ability to do is search your alerts in the alert definitions pane, right? So you can imagine if you were building an alerting system within Logz.io and you start to have hundreds and maybe up to 1,000 alerts, it can be more difficult to search. So this allows you to categorize your alerts right within the platform. The query field again, so this will automatically pull your query in, but you do have the ability to edit the query after the fact. So you can remove any filters, you can also edit the free text. And again, this supports primarily Lucene text, Lucene query syntax. The accounts selection here, this will automatically get populated from the Kibana screen. So what accounts is in terms of Logz.io? So there's a concept of sub-accounts for those that are not familiar. This allows you to divide up your data logically however you see fit. Typically, we see customers do it by business unit, by development environment. So there are a variety of use cases there. And behind the scenes, they're essentially separate Elasticsearch indices. So this allows you to define this alert on more than one Elasticsearch index. That's what's available. So you can select any of the accounts that are available and searchable from your main account within Logz.io. If you have any more questions there, you can reach out to your account manager or customer success engineer and possibly answer those questions over email after the webinar. The next option here is group by. Now what this allows you to do is it allows you to essentially create a group by definition in this alert, so we can receive an alert per host, or an alert per machine, or in the context of one of the examples earlier, alert per client IP or alert per request. So you're grouping it such that you're only doing a check on the condition specified in the query per whatever field is available in Logz.io. So it's as simple as clicking the add group by option. And then if I wanted to check on this, per client IP, I could quickly do that. And so now the alert condition would check every single client IP for this response 500 and whether or not it meets the trigger. So that's fired individually. The next section is the trigger section. What this does is allow me to basically set those conditions, right? So we had defined 50 as the threshold. So that's actually the first thing I'm going to put in here. And the check, what this is going to do is it's going to evaluate the response 500s basically every 30 seconds to 1 minute. So the alerting mechanism is a polling mechanism right now, and this is based on a 5-minute rolling window. So it'll check for that specifically, and if the trigger is met, then the alert will fire, and that becomes an action within the context of your Logz.io account. Now we can also choose a severity level. So there's, severe, high, medium, low, info. This gets passed as metadata to whatever endpoint is consuming this alert. So, right, you can imagine if we're going to service like Slack, so the example medium, right, it actually gets categorized as a medium severity alert. If we were going to a service like PagerDuty, for example, you could create your own routing rules based on the severity of alert. So these are completely customizable, and you do have the option of creating a tiered alerting system. So maybe if there is, 100 within a 5-minute period, we want to make this a high severity alert. So again, this is customizable from that perspective. Then there's the action section. So where does this alert go? By default, we do support email, right? So this could very much go to greg@logz.io. We could also have this go to any of the endpoints that are available here. So I mentioned PagerDuty, Slack, VictorOps, Datadog, BigPanda. These are all common webhook endpoints that we can connect to. I think the important thing to note here is that if there is a service that you're leveraging that's not available in this drop-down list for type, and there is a webhook that's available we can connect to, we can absolutely send an alert to that endpoint. Just requires knowing what the URL of that webhook is, any of the headers that might be available, then we can post any custom JSON payload. So you do get some of the available out of the box keys that we can send, but you can customize this to whatever you want. Cool. Suppress notifications. So what this does is it allows us to suppress notifications on whatever interval we define. So by default, every notification is only triggered to fire once per hour. This serves as a benefit to you and your environments. I think one of the things a lot of us have recognized in this space is alert fatigue, and receiving too many false positives, receiving too many alerts within a specified time frame, especially if an alert resolves itself within a specific interval. So what this allows you to do is make sure that your endpoints aren't receiving more than X alerts within a specified time period. So this can be as low as 5 to 10 minutes, or it can be as much as we can do it once per day. So this is customizable from the perspective of what makes most sense for your environment and your team. The last section I'll hit in here is the custom format. So because I added the client IP as a field in the group by option, that's actually automatically added as a field in the top. So we're actually getting an alert on the response 500s per client IP, and so it's looking out of the client IP fields that in the past 5 minutes that have met this 500 condition. And by default, what this would do is it would send the list of client IPs and the count of those that had 500 errors. So you would get a screenshot relatively similar to this as part of the endpoint receiving that alert. If you need to add other fields, it's as simple as clicking on the plus icon, and then you can select any fields that are available based on the log data in your account. Cool. Once you're done configuring the alert, it's as simple as hitting create. Once that alert's created, it'll automatically take you to your alert definition screen. So this is a list of all the alerts that are in your Logz.io account. So we have 42 alerts within the context of this account. You can see now that alert's configured here. So I have the excessive 500s, right? It shows the description. if we had the recipients filled out, I removed my email, it would show that here. It shows our tags, so you can see some of the other examples of alerts that have been configured within our Logz.io demo account. It also shows the condition, the period, the severity level, who it was created by, when it was last updated. And then there's also actually a set of actions on the far right of each alert. So you'll notice there's two things here. One is a toggle action. Now this just gives me the ability to quickly enable and disable the alert. So this allows me to keep the alert in the account, but not active. So I can quickly do that on the fly. The three dots on the right here, this is a set of actions that allow us to do a few different things. Number one is edit that alert. So obviously go back right into the edit screen for redefining the alert. The other actions available are view last events. So what this will actually do is execute a query within Logz.io based on that series of events, and it'll look for 500 errors. It'll actually do it based on the Logz.io alert definition. So in this example, in the last 5 minutes, there haven't been any 500 errors that have been triggered. But this is an example of how that it would actually pull up within the context of your account. And as I mentioned earlier in the presentation today, there is a contribute function. What this actually does is it allows you to contribute this back to Logz.io so that the alert actually becomes available within LCAPS. Again, if you have any more questions on that, please reach out to your account manager or customer success engineer. Cool. A couple other things available on the alert definitions page, the ability to filter, right? So you can obviously search by the name or description. You can also filter based on severity level, created by, updated by, whether or not an alert's active, and then also those various tags that we were talking about. So this tag list will be populated as you begin to add tags to your alerts within Logz.io. Right. A couple other things available in alerts. So triggered alerts. So we actually keep a full history of every single alert that's been triggered within your Logz.io account. So this is kind of a dashboard for that specific view. Shows when that alert was triggered, what the severity is, what name it was. You can actually go back and edit the alert after the fact if it's firing too much, for example, and adjust the thresholds. Obviously, view that alert within Kibana. So when I click the View in Kibana link, that's going to actually go to everything that alert has defined. Which in this example was looking at Apache access alerts that are coming from the US, that are coming from a Spider device. So that specific alert in the context of Logz.io. Okay. And the last screen I want to show in terms of alerting are all your notification endpoints. So after you've added a Slack channel, after you've added a PagerDuty endpoint, all those endpoints are customizable through here. This just gives me a full view of all those endpoints that have been configured, right? So I can adjust service keys as necessary. The description, maybe I want to rename, some of my endpoints or channels that we're going to in terms of Slack. So this can be fully managed through this interface here. We can also add new endpoints directly from the UI. Awesome. All right, the last example I want to go through is executing an alert on a specific string pattern. So I think one of the things that a lot of users have seen in today's webinar is this string pattern for this new session created session ID and this transaction aborted for session ID. Now you can also alert on a string pattern, so I can actually copy and paste this right into the search bar, and I'm going to wrap it in quotes so it does an exact phrase match. So this is leveraging, again, Lucene syntax, and it finds every single time this transaction aborted for session ID fires. And you'll notice that I have these various session IDs, and so if I actually clicked on the right here, I could see all the various session IDs that I do have within a specified time period. If I wanted to just quickly take a look at those and see, what were the top ones within a specified time frame, or we're only triggering one within the last 15 minutes. But again, if I expand this to 24 hours, I can get a more holistic view of how often those are occurring. Now, maybe I want to create an alert in this example that actually groups by the specific session ID. Right? So one of the things we've done as part of onboarding this data source into Logz.io is extracted the session ID into a field called session ID. So in this example, I'm actually going to go through and create an alert for this exact string pattern. And we're going to group the alert by the session ID field. And we just want to get alerted if it happens more than one time, because we just observed that it's only happening one time for each session ID in the past 24 hours. And if it happens more than once, it's more what I'll call anomalous in terms of alerting. So to do this, right, all we have to do is, now we've defined the query. Again, we'll just click the create alert button. I'm going to skip over the definitions part of this since we went through that earlier. But the biggest thing I want to point out are two different things. One is the group by. So we'll simply just select session ID as the field that we want to add. And then we want to do the trigger on the number of events. So this happens more than once. Let's say it's in we'll call it a 1 hour period. We want to do a larger check. We can absolutely define that. And so now we have this created in the context of the platform. This could go to a Slack channel. So maybe in this example, I'll have it go to our demo alerts channel. And then once I hit create alert, transaction aborted, session ID. And then once I hit create, you'll see it's available here now. So it's filled out the recipients for demo alerts. It has the title, the condition, it evaluates it over every 1 hour, and then you have all of your other metadata associated with this. And so now this alert lives within the context of our account. So this alert will only fire if we get this transaction aborted for session ID more than once per session ID in a 1 hour period. So this can be helpful in possibly identifying multiple sessions being logged in from multiple locations, or multiple users, and as you know, who are your customers who can't access maybe one of your consumer-facing applications. There are a lot of proactive approaches here in terms of how you might solve an issue like this. Cool. With that, I'm going to go into one more topic that's a little more advanced, not something that's entirely intuitive for some of the users in the platform, but one of the features that Logz.io introduced a couple years back was the Insights functionality. Now, what Insights does is it automatically scans every event that comes into your Logz.io account, and it looks for known issues. So think of it kind of like automatic alerting detection. Right, these might be things like shell exploit attempts, connection drops, brute force attacks, etc. These are all crowdsourced events from places like GitHub, Stack Overflow, Quora, SANS Institute. But I think the important thing to note here is that we're automatically identifying these issues for you and alerting on them for you. So these are all surfaced to you automatically. Some of the tools that Logz.io gives you to be more proactive on top of what we already give you in the platform. One, you can get notified when we find net new insights that show up within your account. Again, can go to an email address or one of the webhook endpoints that we covered earlier. Or for specific insights, so let's say we wanted to get notified, if we're getting 100 or more possible shell exploit attempts in our environment, we can actually create an alert based on that insight. And you can actually see that this insight has a specific signature associated with it. And so now we can create an alert specifically on that insight in terms of Logz.io. Again, this is all automatic. So as these events occur, or maybe they don't occur within your account, you can view how often they're happening and get alerted based on whether they happen at all or whether they exceed a specific threshold. Again, if that's something you want to go into more detail, I recommend reaching out to your account manager or customer success engineer. Cool. That's all I have in terms of the demonstration today. So with that, I actually wanted to take a few minutes and answer some questions from the audience.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Greg. I think we have a chat room filled with real-time alert experts. Okay, definitely it's time for questions. If anyone has last-minute questions, feel free to throw them in the chat room. We're going to start with a few that came throughout. So first things first, we've got one from Evan who says, can I send alerts to both my email and Slack channel at the same time?
That's a great question. Yes, I think so. One of the things we covered earlier was on the triggers section. Below that is your endpoints for what you go to. So I added my email. I could have also added a Slack channel, so that text input box allows you to add multiple endpoints. So you can have an alert fires. You want to get sent to an email, sent to multiple Slack channels, sent to a PagerDuty account. Yes, absolutely.
Cool. Okay, our next question comes from James. Is there a limit to how many alerts can be sent?
Nope, not at all. If you have an account with Logz.io, you can configure as many alerts as you have. Some of our larger customers have thousands of alerts configured in their account, and they actually manage all of their alerts through our API and adjust the thresholds accordingly based on what changes. So, nope.
Well, that's great. Okay, next one is from Michael. Do you have any Kibana dashboards showing when and which alerts are triggered within Elk apps?
So two things there. One, we went over the triggered alerts that's available via the alerts dropdown. The second is if you're in Elk apps, there is an alerts dashboard that you can install. If you're an existing customer, again, you can ask your customer success engineer to help you get that set up. But every alert that does fire in Logz.io actually becomes an event. So you can just do a simple search on type Logz.io-alert, and that actually would show a list of all the alerts that are fired based on the time frame and search that you're looking at.
Okay, great. Our next one is from Bob. Where can you access the community contributed alert definitions?
That's a good question, Bob. So it's all under Elk apps. So if you just go to the Elk apps page and you go to the alerts, that's where all the current ones are available.
Okay. And our next one is from, I'm so sorry if I mispronounced this, Shivank. And the question is, I see the time frame limit in the console is 1 day. Do we need an alert with a time frame for 7 days, and can it be done?
In theory, the answer is yes. I guess I would just ask why it's 7 days. The way that the window looks, it just looks based on the time frame at which alerts are flowing into your environment. So I would kind of ask, what the reason for that configuration is. I think we find the majority of our time our customers are evaluating a 7-day customer requirement, evaluating a period of which they're searching for that data. So I think that's something I can help answer offline. I would call that maybe an edge case, not something that you see typically, but more than happy to help with that offline.
Great question. And we only have time for a couple more. So the next one we have is from Allie. Can I run an alert on sub-account data from the main account?
Yes. So I think, again, one of the things I covered was the ability when you're in the alert definition page, you would notice below the query, there are a list of the selectable accounts. And if in Logz.io, if you have your sub accounts, there's a check option available under the advanced options that allows you to make data in sub accounts searchable from the main account. That would allow you to run alerts on the data in the sub account from the main account. So yes.
Okay, great. And we're going to make this the last one. It's a bit longer. This question comes from Eric. He says, let's say we want to send an alert to a Slack channel for every log entry of error log level, but want the ability to prevent alerting to specific exception messages. We already know about these exceptions, maybe marking them somehow.
Okay, so I think the question is, so the log level is error, so that's a field that might be sent. So you would create the query based on the level field with the error value. But if there's specific exceptions, you actually have the ability to do two different things. If those exceptions are embedded in fields and they're pretty standard format. You can add a not condition. That's something that's available in Lucene syntax, either in the filter bar or in the search bar. So you can combine multiple conditions, right? So you can make it say, okay, we want to show every single error, but not errors that have this specific exception associated with them. So again, it's all defined within the query portion first, and then you can create the alert on that after the fact.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Greg, for going over creating real-time alerts on critical events in depth. Thank you all so much for attending. Just a reminder, we will be sending out a recording of this webinar. And lastly, if any of you are in the New York area, we will be at the AWS Summit in New York City at the Javits Center. We're going to be at booth 212, and we'll have a couple of our expert tech support folks, salespeople, and account managers. So feel free to swing by for some swag and with any questions. Have a great day, everyone.